Okay, 1870. I have to say this is, out of the games I have a decent amount of experience in the X series. This is one of my least favorite. The only one I can say I definitely dislike more is 35. I probably dislike the original 29 more as well, at least the northern module for it. That's the only one I actually tried. It was a real snooze fest. 35 has some fixes in the initial pick that might help, but it's such a static sort of game, and it plays out so similar every time that it just doesn't interest me at all. With this one, it's a particular shame that that I don't enjoy it, because it comes with a lot of cool toys in it. You've got a lot of manipulation ability. You also have this really amazing, really board situation with the companies distributed somewhat historically to begin with, which is very cool, but also all over the map. And they have destinations where they have to reach each other. There's no great absolute, powerhouse area. Like in 30, New York City and a couple of other areas really kind of dominate the end game position. So everybody's kind of jockeying for them. 56, Toronto's in that kind of position, and a couple of the other cities. Although things kind of drift that way, that's cool. But in most of the XX games I've seen, there are sort of powerhouse cities that you really need to get access to, so they kind of generate a certain flow of the game. This one does have some of that, in the sense that each company has its destination, and it really does have to reach that. It's very important that it does, because it gets doubled value of that city once it gets its bell ringer. And also just getting the bell ringer is really important, and how you time that and everything. So the way it's spread out, though, means that if you pick different companies to start with, you'd get very different flows of play and different track configurations. Of course, the problem is the money's so low that in 6 players, you almost always get 2 companies. The Frisco, which is guaranteed no matter what, so you're always going to have that kind of central build that it gives. And the Katy, because it comes with an extra share, so somebody can probably float it on their own. Yeah, I don't usually play a game with a lot of collusion in it, and that, opposed or not, there's always kind of, even with opposed games, there's kind of this feeling that colluding with someone else is dirty. We never expressly outlawed it, and in fact I was involved in one of the ugliest, dirtiest scenes of all. But that had to do with setting up a certain track lay that I can excuse it on those grounds. So yeah, this does have a lot of really cool little toys for you to play with in the game. Just look in particular. You've got your private companies, and some of them have neat little things like the shipping token and the cattle token that give extra money. Some of them have little cool things like the bridging of the Mississippi and control of that. That often comes out late in a 6-player game again, because the person who gets the bridge often doesn't get to start the Miz Pack terribly early, or the Cotton Ball, if the case is. In this game, the guy who got it never got to use it. He just sat and took his $10 a turn, and he paid a premium on that sucker. Totally not what you want to do with a minor or a private. It's got the stock market, with all the different color codings from 1830 down to the brown where you can scoop everything up. And then, like 56, it has a closed section. I like that. It gives you an additional possible option to get rid of a company that's really failing for you. It is highly unlikely. I don't think I've ever seen a company close in this. I've seen it happen in 56, though, which has a similar market. What else does it have? I mean, largely it's got the 1830 core, which is sort of my favorite for there to be. Beyond that, though, it's got the share price protection. If somebody sells certificates, and I screwed it up in my game, don't yell at me too much about my screw-ups. I've played this a lot, but it's been a while, and I probably didn't pay enough attention to the rules. No big shock there, but yeah, I thought I misread it as I was looking through it and giving the description of the rules, and then played it the way I misread it, even though my gut was telling me something's wrong with this. So share price protection, what's cool about that is quite often someone's slamming your shares in an 1830 game, or 56, and this allows you, if you have both money and certificate limit open, to be able to just buy those shares as they're being sold and prevent their price from going down. And that actually could be a way to prevent the price from going down into the closed space, in which case you wouldn't need certificate limit to hold it. You would still need cash, but not very much if it's down there. The share redemption and reissues by the corporations. I like corporations being able to fiddle with their own shares and control them. It's one of the things that I like about the Winsome games, is the corporations kind of release shares in a way that makes sense, right? Somebody says, hey, you know, our corporation's so good, but we need more capital in it, so let's release some shares. Well, this kind of simulates what corporations really do, not as well as the Winsome games do, but within that 1830 or 18XX framework that provides a lot more game from my point of view than most of the Winsome games do. A lot meatier, certainly. Even if I think those tend to actually represent reality better than the XX games do. But I do like things to have some historical link, or some link to reality. The way the share issues work, though, there's a lot of subtlety and pre-planning required to kind of decide, all right, am I going to need this cash for the train now? Or can I hold it for another set of operating rounds and make some more money off those share prices? Because that's really big. You have like this incrementing value in your stock treasury, in your corporate treasury, that it's getting bigger, and it's also providing you with income, and that's the only way to get income in this game into your company. So that's pretty impressive there. Anything else really cool? The bell ringers to the destinations. I'm not as impressed by them, but they help you get a little bit more money in the game. And money is tough to come by, especially since the trains run way up into the very expensive, what do we got here? The 12 train at the same price as a diesel, but you've got all kind of in-betweens. The 5 train, which costs the same as the 5s in 1830, isn't permanent. Notionally. What gets me with this game, though, is indeed the trains. They always bottleneck in every game I've played, opposed or not opposed. The furthest I think I've ever seen, I've seen a 12 come out. People really had to work very hard to get it out. Generally, the 10 is a hard job to get out, because everybody can get to their one train without it. You have to screw somebody over to force the 10s out. One corporation has to be without a permanent train, essentially. That's possible if somebody can grab a pair of sixes, for example. The problem is a pair of sixes is expensive and it's hard to do all at once. Maybe with a little juggling, sales of trains. We had it happen once in this game, but then they got dealt out to the companies that wanted them, and not just left on one corporation. So what that means is, since the 12 kills the 5, in games that I've played, the 5 is essentially a perfectly fine permanent train. And that means that the goal, and most games I've played, this has been the goal. Wasn't really in this game, was to get 2 5s. The reason it wasn't in this game was because one player was running his company into the yellow. And I thought that might be enough to push the trains out. I've seen it happen before, but never quite for as long a period of the game. He did it from fairly early on, because it was very obvious that he could not run both companies hard for the entire game. So he was trying to float his company. He came in second doing that. The guy who came in first, the guy who took the simplest of all strategies: get my first permanent train, sit on it, and just be happy with it. Run for stock value. Now that can get you in trouble in this game, because if it goes longer than it did, he would be hitting up against the wall of the stock market. And I've seen that happen in this one, where people run for value and then are just sitting there like, well, I did everything right, but now I'm not gaining any income off this crap. And, I'm just getting my runs, and they're not particularly good because I wasn't configuring my company for that. So a couple of things really lead towards not wanting to get that extra train. One is you have to take a pretty big hit to do it, one way or another. Even if it's just playing a company in the yellow, you have to take a big hit. You're making half your income off of the money you've invested in that company that's running in the yellow, unless you're able to get a company that someone dumped or something. The other factor is there are so many damn tokens and not many places to put them that the board just becomes a congested mess. The track lays, because you've got so much congestion in the cities, and those are what people built to begin with, now people start working their way around the cities, and the game becomes a very heavy game of, can I screw the other guy up by using up the tiles that he needs, or by placing the tile that screws him up here in this location so he can't break through, or just putting a brown one that doesn't let him in, and that's an obnoxious game. The end of it comes to people with trains that are too big, like 8s or maybe even 10s, trying to figure out how to use all the power on those trains, because most of the time hitting reasonable runs, if you're not hitting doinkers that are worth 10 each, what you end up finding is that the 6 train probably is all you really need anyway. The 5's a little short for this game for most people. As long as you're if you're in a really rich area, you can do fine with a 5 though. Component quality was excellent. I've noticed some weird staining. I don't know where it came from. Maybe there were rubber bands or something. But I got this as though it almost looked like a molding or something on here, or somebody jizzed all over it. I don't know. I don't know what happened here. Maybe it was up against the board back, and this is kind of the dye from the board back coming over onto it. I'm not sure where that came from. We got some crap on the board, so I don't know. Maybe some liquid on the table or something. But yeah, the Mayfair games came out with such good quality components, nice thick counters, good stock. It was just, you looked at this after looking at either the Tresham, what was his company? his stuff, or 1830, even 1835, which is kind of nice too. And the Mayfair stuff was just such a beautiful step up from everything else. I felt like I was playing, and the money is very pretty, although the money in this one has gotten kind of folded funny and is hard to play with because of that. But just component-wise, and even the box, it was such a step up from the others. Now, obviously, now you have the Deep Thought, deluxe laminated foam board and all this, and those are pretty nice too. But at the time, this was just kind of a wow. Somebody's making 18XX games, right? I hope they make a lot of them. Well, they made 2. I guess they didn't sell well. I guess it didn't translate. See, now I've got some weird staining here, which kind of matches. I bet you some humidity or something got in there back when it was in my mom's basement. Yeah, I was really hoping to see a lot of XX games come out from Mayfair, and then it just kind of, they did the 2 and then that was it. And I guess the Crayon Rails crowd wasn't really into 18XX. I knew people who were into both. I mean, most of us were in the XX crowd, but then a bunch of us got kind of tired of Crayon Rails for whatever reason. A couple of people were really into it though, the optimizations on the card routes and everything. I got to do one of them. Maybe I'll do one of them next. I need to find something to do. So yeah, this one's a real disappointment with all the cool shit that it has. But the games always end up the same. The trains always fall in this really obnoxious pattern where they just don't come out. And that seems to be just a problem that is unique to me. And I would love... Most of the people I talk to don't play it in 6, though. But we usually played it in 5 or 6. And when I play Solitaire, it's always 6. We just didn't see the train ever come out, and it was just the most tedious game of all the rail XXs. The exception to that is 2038, which a lot of people also like. Again, filled with cool ideas, but man, that one just... it just doesn't end, and it's for the same reason. Now, that one at least admits to the problem. And Tom Lehman did it. He suggests if you don't like that, take one of the trains out. Take out, effectively, I think, one of the 5s from this. My solution for this one would be taking out a 5 would probably help. But make the 10s kill the 5s, make the 12s kill the 6s. That would be the harshest. That thing would end in bankruptcy all the time, or people would have to really work hard to make sure that they got the big trains. It still wouldn't fix the fact of the dots, though, which make those big trains really almost unvaluable. And again, if you're playing in 3 or 4 people, you could probably carve out a little domain where all your companies are running and nobody else can get in, and you fight against them. I don't really view that kind of game as all that much fun. I've done smaller group games of 1830 and of some of the others, and they always seem so much duller than the full chaos of 6 people. But this game may just not work in more than 4 people. I'm not sure. I've never tried it in a small number. It says 3 to 6 though, so I figure it's got to be best in 6, right? I really don't know. I just the people that I hear who really like the game are always saying, "Well, I never had a problem with the trains not coming out." I can't see how you cannot. I mean, even if just sort of the most naive way of playing is I'm just going to run my company and either run it hard all the time or get myself to a permanent train and stop there and run as well as I can. And either of those seem to get you to this position. The only thing that I think might get you elsewhere is very deliberately setting yourself up to try to bring those trains out. And in 6 players, one person ain't going to do that. 2 people ain't going to do that, I'll tell you. It takes like at least half the companies working to do that, I think, to actually throw those 12s into play in any natural sort of sense. If you want to throw them into play by swallowing for the last 6 operating rounds and just hoping you put enough money in and that, the 6 cities that you can still hit by the time you get that 12 train are worth it, yeah, feel free. Knock yourself out. I would love to sit down with a bunch, with a 6-player group where they say, yeah, the trains will all come out. Okay, I'd love to see it, because my feeling is that any kind of play like that is just going to be so far inferior to just trying, if you can, to get a pair of 5s or a pair of 6s or a 5 and a 6 or whatever, and just run it as well as you can. All right, let's end it up.